Hey everyone. This is Six Path Weeb. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's fanfic topic is: what if Naruko was the Shinobi goddess? Part 2. Disclaimer: this content is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage used in this video. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get started. Naruko observed with amusement as Nami once again attempted to persuade Luffy and Zoro to engage in something productive rather than simply lounging around, sleeping, or engaging in aimless shouting. While Naruko herself occasionally indulged in such leisure, she found solace in the fact that she was not officially part of the crew. This distinction allowed her to exempt herself from responsibility while still enjoying the camaraderie. Despite Nami's claims that she was not a member of the crew, insisting instead that they were merely business partners, her actions suggested otherwise. The way she took charge and attempted to organize things demonstrated that, whether she admitted it or not, she was an integral part of the team. Luffy, sitting at the front of the ship, looked at Nami with curiosity. "What do you mean, Nami?" She sighed, exasperated. "Are we really going to sail to the Grand Line without a proper plan?" Luffy pondered for a moment before realization dawned on him. "Oh. That's right. Even though Uncle Cabbage gave us plenty of fruit, we don't have any meat on this ship." Naruko chuckled as Nami, clearly frustrated, clarified that she was not talking about food supplies. Uncle Cabbage was Luffy's nickname for Gaimon, a peculiar man they had encountered on a deserted island. Gaimon had an unusual appearance, his body was stuck inside a treasure chest, and he had an enormous green afro. While Naruko had initially found his situation amusing, she sympathized with him after hearing his story. Ultimately, Gaimon had allowed them to take some fruit from the island, ensuring they had enough sustenance for their voyage. As the conversation continued, Naruko tuned out, recognizing that this discussion would likely repeat itself numerous times during her travels with the crew. Instead, she reflected on her thoughts about her companions. Luffy was, well, Luffy. Naruko considered calling him foolish, but doing so would mean admitting that she, too, had been reckless in the past. While she acknowledged her own ignorance in her younger years, Luffy's level of simplicity was on another level. However, there was something endearing about him. He was straightforward, friendly, and exuded a natural charisma that made people gravitate toward him. Despite his carefree attitude, he possessed immense strength, stronger than anyone Naruko had encountered so far. In many ways, he reminded her of herself. Zoro, on the other hand, was incredibly laid back. While not as effortlessly lazy as Naruko's old friend Shikamaru, he certainly enjoyed his rest. However, unlike Shikamaru, Zoro balanced his relaxation with rigorous training. Naruko had even witnessed him lifting weights while half asleep, a sight that reminded her of her former ally, Rock Lee. Beneath his somewhat intimidating exterior, Zoro was a loyal and honorable individual. Before joining Luffy, he had been a pirate hunter, and now he pursued the ambitious goal of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Considering the vastness of the world, so large that Naruko couldn't even find the elemental nations on Nami's maps, Zoro had an immense journey ahead of him. Nami intrigued Naruko the most. She was clearly hiding something. While she insisted that she wasn't part of the crew and viewed their relationship as a mere partnership, her concern for everyone, including Naruko, told a different story. She constantly emphasized the gravity of their journey and the dangers they faced. After some persistence, Naruko learned that Nami's dream was to create a complete map of the world. Wanting to support her goal, Naruko promised to take her to the elemental nations, allowing her to document a place few had ever mapped. Nami's surprised blush at the offer had earned an amused laugh from Naruko. As Naruko was lost in thought, she suddenly realized that they had arrived at an island. Huh? She glanced around, taking in their surroundings. Where are we? Does this place actually have a town this time? Nami nodded. Yes. According to the map, there's a village here. Let's head in. Naruko nodded and nudged Zoro awake. Time to move, swordsman. We're going into town. Zoro stretched and jumped onto solid ground. Feels good to be on land again. Naruko smirked. It wouldn't have been that long if you weren't always asleep. Zoro waved her off as he looked around. By the way, I just noticed. He pointed toward a ridge. Who are those guys? A group of children and a teenager stood at a distance, watching them. The children had distinctive hairstyles resembling an onion, a carrot, and a pepper. The teenager had black curly hair, a long nose, and wore a yellow plaid bandana with goggles perched on top. He was dressed in brown overalls and a white sash. The younger children, upon being noticed, immediately ran away, leaving the teenager alone. He called after them, urging them to return, but they had already disappeared. Turning back to the newcomers, he straightened up and declared confidently, "I am the great pirate fleet leader, Usopp. I am in charge of security in this village, and I am also known as Captain Usopp." He struck a bold pose. "It would be wise not to attack this village, for my army of 80 million men will crush you." Naruko raised an eyebrow, amused. "If you had 80 million people on this little island, you'd probably be trying to leave instead of keeping us out. I call bluff." Usopp immediately panicked. "Ah. I've been exposed." Nami sighed. "You didn't help yourself by admitting it." Usopp groaned, "I can't believe I just said that." Luffy, meanwhile, seemed highly entertained. "You're pretty funny, you know that?" Usopp straightened up with pride. "Of course. I am a man of high self-esteem. Everyone calls me the Honorable Usopp." Naruko rolled her eyes. "Right. I'm sure they do." She walked past him, glancing toward the village. "So, where did those kids run off to? Did they go back to town? I'm starving. Any chance there's a place that serves ramen here?" "No." Naruko's eyes widened in disbelief as she read the menu at a small tavern in Syrup Village. "No ramen? How can there be no ramen anywhere? This isn't funny anymore, I need my fix." Her exasperation was largely ignored as Usopp continued explaining where they could find a ship. Naruko perked up. "Oh, so that's what you guys were talking about back on the boat." Luffy grinned. "Yep. Every pirate crew needs an awesome pirate ship. And with us on it, it has to be the coolest ship on the seas." Naruko sighed but couldn't help a small smile at Luffy's enthusiasm. He might not be the smartest, but his energy was infectious. "So that's your plan? You're going to check out that mansion Usopp mentioned and see if you can get a ship?" Usopp nodded. "It's the only place in the village where you can find one. The mansion on the hill belongs to its owner, a young girl who's always bedridden due to illness." Nami looked surprised. "She's sick? Then how is she managing everything?" Luffy and Zoro were too preoccupied with their meals to listen, as Luffy eagerly ate more meat while Zoro sipped his drink. Usopp went on to explain that the girl had inherited everything after her parents passed away, and she lived alone with her caretakers. Nami sighed. "All right. Never mind. We'll look for a ship somewhere else." Naruko grinned. "We, Nami-chan? For someone who insists she's not part of the crew, you sure act like it." Nami glared at her. "And what am I supposed to act like then? A lazy freeloader like you?" Naruko smirked. "Exactly." Usopp then noticed something. "Oh, earlier you mentioned you were looking for more crew members. Is that right?" Luffy, finishing another plate of food, looked over at him. "That's right. Do you know someone who wants to join?" Usopp pointed to himself. "Let me be the captain, and I'll join." Naruko let out a laugh while Luffy and Nami turned away, both saying in unison, Never mind." Usopp's dramatic reaction only made Naruko laugh harder. After a while Usopp excused himself, saying it was that time again, and left. Naruko glanced out the window, observing the peaceful village. "Wow. This place is so calm. I don't think I've seen a village that runs this smoothly in a long time. It's like nothing ever happens here." Nami leaned back, stretching. "I know what you mean. It almost makes you want to take a nap just walking through it." Naruko nodded. "Yeah, definitely nothing like where I came from." That caught everyone's attention. Luffy swallowed his food and asked, "So, Naruko, where are you from anyway? You don't look like anyone from the East Blue." Naruko chuckled. "That's because I'm not from the East Blue. I come from a place far south, so far, you'd think you'd sailed around the world to get there. It's pretty hard to find if you're not a skilled navigator." Luffy's eyes sparkled. "Whoa. That sounds mysterious." Then he tilted his head. "Wait. Does that mean you're from the South Pole?" Naruko facepalmed. "Not exactly, Luffy. But close enough. My village was huge, always busy. Our military was the most important institution, ninjas were the most respected and skilled people there." Zoro raised an eyebrow. "So, did you have Marines stationed there?" Naruko laughed. "Oh no, we were the military. Every major nation had its own ninja forces. They were constantly in conflict, it was exhausting to think about." Nami eyed her curiously. "So what did you do as a ninja, Naruko?" Naruko shrugged. "A little bit of everything, escorts, intelligence gathering, even high-stakes missions. You basically dedicated your life to the system. The only real way out was retirement. And not many made it that far." Zoro narrowed his eyes. "So, how did you leave?" Naruko gave a wistful smile. That's a story for another time. Just then, the tavern doors burst open. The Usopp pirate crew is here. 3 little kids stood at the entrance, wooden swords raised. Everyone stared in confusion. Huh? The kids scanned the room, looking for Usopp. Where's the captain? You don't think he was eaten, do you? Naruko palmed her face while Nami laughed. What are you munchkins talking about? No one ate anyone. And stop yelling, we're inside. Give us back our Captain Usopp. The kids shouted. Naruko twitched. For the love of all things ramen. Why does everyone keep calling me a pirate? Do I look like a pirate? No. Do I act like a pirate? No. I just got on a boat with the wrong flag. Does that make me a pirate? The kids hesitated. What did you do to the captain? Naruko sighed. Ask the guy with the hat. Luffy stood up, patting his belly. Ah, that was some delicious meat. The kids gasped in horror. He ate the captain? Naruko burst into laughter. Zoro smirked. Nothing really. We just ate him, he said it so seriously that the kids froze in terror. Nami glared. Why would you tell them that? After reviving the kids and explaining everything, they finally calmed down. Oh. So he went to the mansion again. Luffy tilted his head. Why does he go there? To tell stories. Luffy frowned. Isn't lying a bad thing? Not really. It makes her happy. Naruko chuckled. The people here were so amusing. The kids explained that Usopp had been telling stories to the girl in the mansion to cheer her up. Nami nodded. So he's been helping keep her spirits up. The kids grinned. Yup. I like his big nose. I like the captain's bravery. I like his lies. Zoro's sweat dropped. What kind of compliments are those? Luffy stood up. If he's making her happy, we should go ask for a ship. Despite Nami's protests about his approach, they all ended up at the mansion. Luffy climbed over the gate, and the others followed. Naruko noticed the kids hesitating. Hey, can't you get over? They shook their heads. Captain Usopp told us to stay outside. Naruko frowned, then picked them up and effortlessly leapt over the gate. There, problem solved. The kids gawked. Whoa. How did you do that? Naruko scratched the back of her head. Practice? They followed Luffy, who had already started talking to a young blonde girl at the mansion window, only to be interrupted by a sharp voice. What are you doing here? You can't just barge in. Naruko narrowed her eyes at the man who had just arrived. Something about him felt off. And she didn't like it one bit. There was something about Klahadore that unsettled Naruko. Perhaps it was his condescending attitude toward those he deemed beneath him, or maybe the way he carried himself with an air of superiority. The mere sight of him adjusting his glasses was enough to irritate her. Naruko was pulled from her thoughts when she noticed an unusual figure approaching. A man in a long blue coat, wearing a blue hat, heart-shaped sunglasses, and sporting a peculiar beard, which, upon closer inspection, was actually a mushroom, was walking backward down the road. She stopped in her tracks, watching him curiously until he also came to a halt. The man glanced at Naruko, then at the mansion she had just left, then back at the mansion again. Raising an eyebrow, Naruko finally spoke. Can I help you with something, or are you just going to keep staring back and forth like that? You're kind of creeping me out. The man focused on her. Now, why am I weird? I'm just a simple hypnotist. What brings you to these parts, sister? Something inside Naruko told her to ignore him and move along, but her curiosity got the better of her. I'm just passing through. The man pulled out a ring attached to a rope and began swinging it in front of her. Well then, allow me to show you one of my tricks. When I say 1, 2, Django, you will feel very sleepy, understand? 1, 2. Naruko took a step back, wary. I don't think that's really necessary. Django. Everything went dark. Later that night. Wake up, Naruko. A nudge to her side served as her wake-up call. She opened her eyes to find Luffy, Usopp, Nami, and Zoro standing over her. With a yawn, she sat up. What's going on? Why am I in the middle of the road? The memory of the hypnotist returned to her. Oh, that guy. Django. Usopp nodded. Yeah, that's him. Naruko blinked. Wait, you guys met him too? Please tell me he didn't pull that hypnosis trick on you. Luffy grinned. He got me too. I fell off a cliff while I was sleeping. Naruko's sweat dropped. Of course you did, Luffy. Why am I not surprised? Then, noticing the serious expressions on everyone's faces, she frowned. What's with the looks? You'd think someone was planning to attack the town or something. When silence followed, her eyes widened. No way. Really? Usopp gritted his teeth. It's Klahadore. He's actually Captain Kuro of the Black Cat Pirates. He plans to attack the town tomorrow and take Kaya's fortune for himself. Naruko clenched her fists. So that guy isn't just an arrogant butler, he's an actual villain? Well, now I've got a reason to take him down. She turned to Luffy, Zoro, and the others. I get Kuro. No arguments, Luffy. I'm not on your crew, I'm not a pirate, but that guy rubs me the wrong way, and now I have an excuse to fight him. I'm taking it. She stood up. Now, how do we prepare for this? The group led Naruko to a sloped path by the shore, surrounded by cliffs. They had coated the incline with oil to prevent the invading pirates from climbing easily. While it was risky, Naruko wasn't concerned for herself, she could use her chakra control to stay steady. You're sure they're coming from here? Usopp nodded. This is the main path to the village. If they want to get there, this is the only way. Naruko surveyed the area as the sun began to rise. I'll stay hidden for now. Too many of us crowding the pass could be a problem. Usopp chuckled. Sure, leave the crazy stunts to me. Naruko smirked and hid in the foliage along the pass. After a while, she heard Nami mention noise coming from the north. Muttering a curse, she dashed through the woods to reach the other side of the island. When she arrived, Usopp was already there. This is your last chance. Surrender now, or my crew of 1 billion will wipe you out. The enemy pirates grumbled at the obvious bluff, and Naruko smirked. She made a cross-shaped hand sign, creating multiple shadow clones that spread across the area. As Usopp and Nami attempted to hold them off, Usopp was struck with a hammer and Nami was injured trying to defend him. Seeing her friend hurt, Naruko's patience snapped. Enough of this nonsense. Standing on the ledge, she called down, Hey, Usopp. Sorry I'm late. I had trouble gathering my army. With a snap of her fingers, her identical clones poured out of the forest, overwhelming the pirates. Usopp, stunned, asked, How? Are you that strong? Naruko grinned. You bet. Now get up. We're just getting started. She helped Nami to her feet. You okay, Nami-chan? Nami nodded. What took you so long? Naruko laughed. Well, since we're fighting the Black Cat Pirates, I figured I'd take the long way around. Didn't want any bad luck. At that moment, Luffy and Zoro arrived, looking annoyed. Luffy pointed at Usopp. Usopp. Why didn't you tell me where north was? Usopp's sweat dropped. You ran off first. I thought you knew. Zoro turned to Nami. And thanks a lot for stepping on my head when you climbed up that hill. Nami waved it off. Someone had to get out of there, didn't they? Meanwhile, Naruko's clones continued overwhelming the pirates. Luffy, watching the scene, pointed excitedly. Wow. You have a lot of twin sisters, Naruko. Naruko chuckled. Not quite, Luffy. This is one of my techniques, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Each clone shares my energy and can fight like me. Before she could say more, Django swung his hypnotic ring again. The fallen pirates stood back up, invigorated. Nami gasped. What? Naruko just defeated them, and now they look fine. Zoro scowled. They're stronger than before. Naruko sighed. Great. Now we're dealing with a bunch of berserk weaklings. Usopp, Nami, fall back. As Zoro prepared to fight alongside Luffy, something unexpected happened. Luffy, caught in Django's hypnosis, turned berserk himself and went on a rampage. Naruko groaned, palming her forehead. Oh, great. Luffy's hypnotized too. After a chaotic battle, Luffy, still under hypnosis, accidentally destroyed the enemy's ship. Just as they thought they had the upper hand, Captain Kuro finally appeared, exuding an ominous presence. Naruko narrowed her eyes. So, the so-called butler finally decides to show himself. Kuro adjusted his glasses, speaking with disdain. It's passed on, and my plan remains incomplete. How disappointing. Naruko stepped forward, cracking her knuckles. You know, I was already irritated with you yesterday. Now? You're really asking for it. She took a deep breath, standing firm as the battle for the village truly began. Usopp nodded from the ground and fired a shot from his slingshot at the departing Django, successfully knocking him down. However, Django quickly recovered and continued his pursuit. Struggling to his feet, Usopp was suddenly confronted by Butchie. Just as Butchie was about to strike, Zoro intervened, swiftly defeating him. Zoro hoisted Usopp onto his shoulders. "I'll take you to find them. You can't walk, and I have a terrible sense of direction." Kuro stepped in front of them, blocking their path. "And who says I'm letting you leave?" Before he could react, a powerful kick struck him from the side, sending him tumbling. Naruko landed gracefully, arms crossed and an unimpressed look on her face. "No one cares what you think," she said firmly. Zoro seized the opportunity and took off into the forest with Usopp. Kuro quickly regained his footing and vanished, reappearing behind Naruko in an attempt to strike. Naruko, anticipating the attack, blocked it effortlessly with a kunai. "You should leave now while you still can," she advised. "Walk away, and I won't have to embarrass you in front of your crew." Kuro took a step back, studying Naruko. "Why would you risk so much for this village?" Naruko chuckled. "Risk? Against you? That's funny. But if you must know, I'm here for 2 reasons. 1, my friends are here, and I've grown pretty attached to them." She glanced at Nami, who was trying to wake up Luffy, and gave her a knowing smile. "And 2, I just really don't like your attitude." Kuro lunged forward, claws aimed at Naruko. She dodged effortlessly. "You're not as fast as you think," she said with a sigh. "And honestly, why go through all this? You had a chance to leave with the money and start fresh." Kuro growled in frustration. "That wasn't enough. I wanted to erase my past and be free from the burdens of leadership. I grew tired of managing my crew. Even achieving fame as a pirate only made my life more complicated. That's why I disappeared 3 years ago." Naruko shook her head before delivering a swift punch, knocking Kuro backward. She gave him a disappointed look. "So, you wanted an easy life, but when things got tough, you ran away. And now you're still trying to manipulate others to serve your selfish goals? That's just pathetic." Kuro slowly stood up, his frustration mounting. "I've spent years preparing for this moment. You think you can stop me?" He vanished again, appearing at Naruko's side with an attack ready. Without hesitation, Naruko caught Kuro's claws with one hand. "First, I can stop you. You were never a real threat. Second, I'm not a brat. And third." Her grip tightened, and she snapped his claws with ease. "I am not a pirate." The impact sent Kuro tumbling down the hill. Nami, having stopped trying to wake Luffy, watched in awe. "Naruko. Who are you? Where does someone like you even come from?" Kuro, bleeding but still determined, glared at his crew. "Why are you just standing there? I never intended to let any of you leave. If people found out I was alive, it would ruin everything." Naruko sighed. "Wow. You're really the worst, aren't you? You treat your own crew like they don't matter." Kuro scoffed. "That's what being a pirate is. You're just a child, you wouldn't understand." Before he could continue, Naruko struck him with a well-placed knee, forcing him to double over. "You're wrong," she said coolly. "You're nothing but a coward." She grabbed Kuro by the collar and tossed him aside. "Go ahead, give it your best shot. I want you to realize just how outmatched you are." Kuro slowly stood, adopting a new stance. "You want to see the strength of someone who has survived countless battles?" His crew panicked. "He's using Sheikushi? If we're caught in the middle, we won't make it." Naruko smirked. "Well, now I'm curious. But listen, Kuro, you may have survived battles, but I was raised in combat. You're completely out of your league." Suddenly, Kuro's crew members began collapsing, each with slash marks appearing across their bodies. Walls and surroundings bore the scars of his rapid attacks. The scene sent a wave of unease through the onlookers. Nami's eyes widened in shock. How could he do this to his own men? Naruko clenched her fists, frustration evident in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, she thrust out her arm, catching Kuro by the throat mid-attack. She tightened her grip slightly. "You attacked your own crew just to get to me? And the worst part? You're not even that fast. I've fought people who make you look slow, and I'm faster than you." She released him, forming a Rasengan in her palm before pressing it into Kuro's chest. He let out a pained cry before collapsing, unconscious. Naruko turned to the remaining crew members. "Take him and leave. I don't want anything from him or his ship. Just get out of here before I change my mind." The crew wasted no time in gathering Kuro and retreating. Once their ship disappeared from sight, Naruko finally sat down. Nami joined her, setting down a bag. "Luffy's still out cold, huh? You must be exhausted after all of that." Naruko shook her head. "Not really. That wasn't even a challenge. I just needed a moment to calm down. Listening to Kuro talk was frustrating. By the way, are you okay? Django got you pretty good. It's just a small cut, Nami reassured her. However, she hesitated before continuing. I've never seen anyone fight like that before. It was honestly a little scary. You didn't even use that clone technique from earlier. Naruko shrugged. He was weak. I've fought people who could take him down instantly. He thought he was fast, but compared to real fighters, he was moving in slow motion. I don't use my stronger techniques on people like that. Nami's sweat dropped. That was Captain Kuro, one of the most infamous pirates in the East Blue. Naruko scratched her head. Really? This part of the world must be really weak, then. Other than being fast, he didn't have much going for him. Luffy could have beaten him, if he hadn't knocked himself out first. Nami gave her a skeptical look but decided to let it go. Why did you let the other pirates go? You could have stopped them all. Naruko sighed. They were just following the wrong person. They didn't deserve to be punished for being tricked. Nami adjusted the bag in her lap. That's just how pirates are, Naruko-kun. Naruko raised an eyebrow at the honorific but filed it away for later. Instead, she simply pointed toward Luffy, who was still fast asleep on the boat. Nami laughed sheepishly. Okay, maybe you and Luffy are different. Naruko smiled but then frowned slightly. Maybe so, Nami-chan. But I am not a pirate. How many times do I have to say it before it sticks? One day, following their battle with the Black Cat pirates, the crew found themselves at their usual tavern when Kaya arrived, eager to show them something. She led them to the very shore where they had fought just the day before, where a delightful surprise awaited them. Nami clasped her hands together in excitement. It's a caravel, she exclaimed. Naruko, however, was far more expressive in her enthusiasm. She rushed forward and embraced the ship's side, effortlessly sticking to it with chakra, much like a spider clinging to a wall. Oh, thank goodness. Finally, some space to move around. I had spoiled myself with proper accommodations before starting this journey. I can't tell you how much I've missed having a real ship. The sight of her clinging to the ship like a long-lost relative left the others at a loss for words. Mary, clearing his throat, stepped forward to provide an explanation. This vessel was designed by me. While it may appear somewhat aged, it remains a sturdy caravel equipped with a central rudder. Its name is the Going Merry. He turned his attention to the group. You were the ones who defeated the Black Cat pirates, correct? I was expecting a larger crew. Luffy immediately threw his hands into the air in excitement. Yes. Does this mean you're giving us the ship? Kaya laughed warmly and nodded. As the group took in their new vessel, Mary attempted to explain the ship's steering mechanism to Luffy. However, Nami quickly interjected, he's not going to understand any of that. You'd better explain it to me instead. Naruko smirked and leaned in slightly. Oh? I thought you weren't part of the crew, Nami. Why are you so eager to learn how to navigate it? Nami hesitated before responding, I just don't want to end up lost at sea. What about you? You're still coming with us, aren't you? Naruko waved off the concern. Yeah, but that's only because this is the only way out of here. I'm not actively taking charge unless I feel like it, or if something directly involves me. For the most part, I'm just along for the ride. She glanced at the ship with a satisfied grin. Though, I must say, the company isn't bad. Nami blushed at Naruko's casual remark but had no time to respond before a sudden commotion drew everyone's attention. Somebody stop me. Usopp came barreling down the hill with an oversized pack on his back, heading straight for the ship. Luffy tilted his head in curiosity. What's he doing? Naruko's eyes widened in alarm. Luffy, stop him before he crashes into the ship. I just got my elbow room back. Without hesitation, Luffy extended his foot and pressed it against Usopp's face, halting his momentum just in time. Usopp sighed in relief. Thanks. Before long, Usopp officially decided to join the crew, prompting a lively celebration on board. As excitement filled the air, Usopp painted the crew's emblem on the sail. Eventually, after witnessing Usopp's impressive skills with both a slingshot and a cannon, Luffy raised his mug with a wide grin. All right. The crew now has a captain, a swordsman, a navigator, a sharpshooter, and whatever Naruko is. Naruko, who had settled into a couch in the common area, waved dismissively. I'm not part of your crew, Luffy. I'm just here for the free ride. I help out when necessary, but that doesn't mean I'm officially on board. I'm more of a wanderer. Luffy, unbothered, pointed at her with a determined expression. Then you're the crew's vagabond. Naruko sighed, exasperated. That's not even a real crew position, Luffy. Luffy blinked, considering for a moment. Would resident ship's traveler sound better? Before Naruko could respond, a loud shout from the deck interrupted the conversation. Show yourselves. You can't hide forever. The celebration came to an abrupt halt as the crew turned their attention to the unexpected intruder. Show yourself. I will not let you get away with this. Luffy hurried to the deck, where a man with short black hair, sunglasses, a blue hoodie over a purple shirt, and white pants was causing chaos. The stranger kicked objects around, his presence unsettling. Hey! Who are you? Luffy demanded. The man turned at the sound of Luffy's voice, drawing a large, cleaver-like sword from his waist. That's none of your concern, he said sharply before lunging forward, slashing at Luffy. Luffy dodged swiftly, but the force of the attack splintered part of the ship's railing. Remember that. Naruko sighed. If you're attacking our ship, then it absolutely is our concern, genius. Inside the cabin, Nami and Usopp observed the confrontation through a window. There's only one of them, Usopp noted. Zoro, sitting back without a care, barely glanced at the commotion. Luffy's got it under control. Naruko shrugged and followed suit, heading inside to sit down. If Zoro wasn't concerned enough to intervene, then there was no reason to be worried. The stranger clenched his jaw. I've taken down many pirates. A notorious pirate like you. He lunged at Luffy again, swinging his blade. Shouldn't have harmed my friend. Luffy frowned, frustrated by the baseless accusation. I don't even know what you're talking about. With a swift leap, he avoided the attack, grabbing the man's head midair. But stop wrecking my ship. With a powerful motion, he flipped over and hurled the attacker face first into the ship's wall. The man groaned as he slumped to the ground. I almost had him. The loud impact drew Zoro's attention as he stepped onto the deck. Huh? Isn't that Johnny? What's going on? Where's Yosaku? At the sight of Zoro, Johnny immediately jumped to his feet. Zoro Aniki. Naruko emerged from the cabin, raising an eyebrow. Zoro, you know this guy? It turned out that Johnny and his partner, Yosaku, were bounty hunters who had previously worked with Zoro. They had been resting on a nearby island while Yosaku recovered from an illness when Usopp's cannon fire accidentally struck the area. As Nami had suspected, Yosaku was suffering from scurvy. Fortunately, after being given some vitamin C, he was expected to recover quickly. The incident made one thing clear to the crew: they needed a cook on board. Johnny suggested a floating restaurant a couple of days away and also shared information about a swordsman called Hawkeyes, rumored to be in the area. Soon, they spotted a place called Barati, but just offshore, a marine vessel was stationed nearby. A man with iron bolts embedded in his knuckles stood on the deck, scrutinizing their flag. I've never seen that insignia before, he remarked. I am Lieutenant Fullbody, the Iron Fist of the Marines. Who is your captain? Luffy stepped forward confidently. That would be me. I finished my flag just 2 days ago. Fullbody's gaze shifted to Johnny and Yosaku. Oh, I recognize you too. You're those second-rate bounty hunters, right? You've been captured by these pirates? Johnny and Yosaku bristled at the insult and attempted to retaliate, but Fullbody easily overpowered them, knocking them back onto the Going Merry. He then arrogantly escorted a woman from the marine ship into the restaurant, claiming he was there for a leisurely meal. Naruko nudged their fallen bodies with her foot. Wow. You two didn't even last a second. Is anyone in the East Blue actually strong? She turned to Nami, who remained silent, gripping a wanted poster with a tense expression. Her hands trembled slightly, revealing her anger. Before Naruko could ask, Usopp shouted in alarm, Hey! Look at the marine ship. They're aiming their cannons at us. Luffy reacted immediately, inflating his body to deflect the incoming cannonball. However, instead of sending it back to the marine ship, he accidentally launched it straight into Barati's roof. The crew watched in shock as debris scattered from the impact. Naruko sighed, rubbing her temples as the restaurant staff stormed outside in their chef uniforms. Luffy panicked, running in circles. Oh no! That could have seriously hurt someone. What am I supposed to do? Naruko placed a hand on Luffy's back and casually pushed him off the ship onto the floating restaurant. Well, you're the captain. Go handle it. As the chefs dragged Luffy inside, a smirk crossed Naruko's face. She climbed up to the crow's nest, stretching out to relax. Meanwhile, Usopp eyed the restaurant with uncertainty. Naruko, are you sure that was a good idea? Naruko yawned, gazing at the sky. Hey, he's the captain, right? That means he has to take responsibility for things like that. A loud crashing sound echoed from inside Bharati. Yep, Naruko muttered, closing her eyes. He'll be fine. Luffy found himself working at the Bharati restaurant to compensate for the damages caused by the cannonball incident. During his time there, he met Sanji, a skilled blonde chef whom he immediately wanted to recruit into his crew. However, there were more pressing matters to handle before that could happen. For 2 days, the crew remained at the restaurant, waiting for Luffy to fulfill his obligations. In the meantime, they enjoyed dining at the establishment while also playfully teasing Luffy about his struggles. Due to his complete lack of experience with even the simplest tasks, he was frequently scolded and reassigned to different duties. Naruko, feeling restless, amused herself by setting up harmless pranks that made Luffy's job even more challenging. After 2 days, Naruko grew tired of the restaurant. While Nami managed to get free meals from Sanji, the rest of them had to pay, and Naruko didn't have much money to spare. As a result, she decided to stay on the ship and eat there instead. She spent most of her time resting in the crow's nest while the others went about their daily activities. One day, Naruko woke up to the sensation of movement. Rubbing her eyes, she realized the ship was sailing. Looking down, she saw Nami at the helm, but the rest of the crew was nowhere in sight. Assuming they were inside, she used her speed to appear behind Nami. "What's going on, Nami-chan?" Naruko asked curiously. Nami jumped in surprise and turned to face Naruko with wide eyes. "And Naruko? What are you doing here?" Naruko tilted her head. "I was asleep in the crow's nest. The restaurant got boring after a while, so I stayed on the ship. Where are we headed?" Nami hesitated before replying, "I'm going to Kokoyashi village on Kami Island." Naruko raised an eyebrow. "What about the rest of the crew?" Nami looked away. "I left them at the Bharati." Naruko's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Why would you leave them behind? Is Luffy in trouble? Couldn't someone else have come with you?" Nami flinched. "Well, I kind of took the ship without telling them." Naruko blinked before shrugging. "All right then." Nami looked at her in confusion. "What?" Naruko leaned against the railing. "I told you before, I'm not officially part of the crew. I'm just along for the adventure. As long as the ship is moving, I'm fine with wherever we go. So, what's in Kokoyashi village that's so important?" Nami hesitated before responding, "It's my home." Naruko observed Nami closely. There was an unusual seriousness in her voice. "Why did you leave your home in the first place?" Nami remained silent for a moment before asking, "Why did you?" Naruko sighed and gazed at the horizon. "I love my village, but times changed. Ninjas aren't as necessary as they once were. I dedicated my life to protecting my home, but when they no longer needed me, I decided to explore. The world is vast, and I want to see what it has to offer. Maybe I'll find a new purpose out here." Nami gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. "You'll understand everything when we get there." When they arrived at the island, Naruko followed Nami through the lush landscape. She admired the peaceful surroundings but noticed how tense Nami seemed. Eventually, they reached a large gated area along the shore. Naruko stared at the massive structure in surprise. "How did I miss this when we sailed in?" Nami didn't take her eyes off the fortress ahead. "We approached from a different angle. It's not hidden, it's meant to be seen. They don't fear the Marines. Probably because they control them." Naruko crossed her arms. "Who's they? And what exactly are we dealing with?" Before Nami could answer, rapid footsteps approached. A young boy carrying a wooden sword stopped in front of them, determination in his eyes. "Get out of my way!" the boy shouted. "I have to stop Arlong. If you don't move, I'll fight you too." Naruko looked at the boy, amused but curious. "Is he serious?" Nami simply watched with a neutral expression. "I said move," the boy repeated, gripping his sword tightly despite the tears forming in his eyes. Before he could act, Nami swiftly knocked the sword from his hand and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go home where it's safe," she said, handing him a small bag of money. "This will help." Naruko watched in silence as the boy hesitated before picking up the money and running off. She turned back to Nami, waiting for an explanation, but Nami simply walked forward. Inside the fortress, Naruko noticed several fish-human hybrids, all watching her closely. Their expressions were a mix of curiosity and hostility, but none dared to make a move while she stayed by Nami's side. At the heart of the compound, a tall, imposing merman with a saw-like nose and sharp teeth lounged on a patio. His long black hair draped over his shoulders, and he wore an unbuttoned tropical shirt, revealing his muscular physique. He grinned upon seeing Nami. "So you've returned?" he said. "It's been a long time." Nami forced a smile. "Your security hasn't improved." The merman laughed. "Why would I need security? No one would dare challenge me." Naruko remained silent, sensing the tension between them. Arlong gestured toward Nami's bag. "How much did you bring this time? Come on, don't keep me waiting." Nami lifted the bag slightly. "I got a decent amount, but I felt a little lonely this time." She motioned toward Naruko. Arlong's grin faltered as he examined Naruko. "And who's this? Another weak human?" Naruko smirked. "I'm just a traveler. Nami stole the ship I was on, so I figured I'd tag along." Arlong let out a deep chuckle. "Interesting. With abilities like yours, why not work for me?" Naruko crossed her arms. "I work for myself." Arlong's grin tightened. "Then consider yourself hired." Naruko's eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't take orders that easily." The tension in the air grew heavier as Arlong studied her. Naruko remained unfazed, waiting to see what would happen next. Whatever trouble lay ahead, she was ready for it. "Enough." Arlong slammed his fist onto the table, causing it to crack under the pressure. "I'm offering you a chance to spare your human life because I recognize some skill in you. By all rights, I should have you eliminated just for setting foot in this place. However, you seem different from the others on this island. You carry yourself with confidence, and given your connection to Nami, I see potential value in keeping you around." Nami tensed as she watched Naruko remain unfazed by Arlong's threatening words. Naruko was carefully considering her options, debating whether standing up to this guy would be worth it. On one hand, knocking some sense into him would be satisfying. He clearly had no idea who he was talking to. More importantly, it might bring a genuine smile to Nami's face, instead of the forced one she had been wearing since they arrived. On the other hand, if Nami was holding back her frustration, it was likely because she had her own reasons for not retaliating. If Naruko acted impulsively, it could create more problems for Nami, and she had no intention of making things worse for her friend. Instead, Naruko smirked and stood up. "All right, Arlong. You've got my attention. If the pay is good, I'll work for you. What exactly do you need from me?" Arlong's sharp teeth gleamed in a grin. "A wise choice. Your task is simple: stay with Nami and ensure her safety. She is an asset to us, and if she trusts you enough to bring you here, then you must be somewhat reliable." Naruko glanced at Nami, who looked conflicted, sadness evident in her eyes. She clearly didn't want Naruko to get involved, but Naruko merely grinned in response and turned back to Arlong. "Fine, but I don't take orders from you." Arlong's grin faltered slightly. "Excuse me?" Naruko raised a hand to stop him from reacting too quickly. "I answer to Nami, who in turn answers to you. That means, in a way, you're still the one in charge, just not directly. Besides, your crew wouldn't accept me as one of their own, so this arrangement works best for everyone." Arlong chuckled. "You truly do not fear us, do you, Uzumaki?" Naruko shook her head. "If you knew the things I've faced, you'd understand why appearances don't intimidate me." She extended a hand. "So, do we have a deal?" Arlong let out a sharp laugh before clapping Naruko on the back. "Very well, Uzumaki." He turned to his crew. "Our sister has returned, and she's brought us a new ally. Let's celebrate." The fishmen erupted into cheers at Arlong's declaration. Later, as the festivities continued, Nami pulled Naruko aside, her expression serious. "You need to leave." Naruko frowned. "What? Why?" Nami crossed her arms. "Arlong won't harm me, he considers me too valuable. You, on the other hand, are a wild card. Go to Kokoyashi village. There's a house with a tangerine grove in the back." Understanding the urgency in Nami's voice, Naruko decided not to argue. She made her way through the village, quickly noticing the wary and even hostile glances from the locals. Word of her apparent alliance with Arlong had spread fast. "It's been a while since I've been looked at like this," she mused, shaking her head. Eventually, she arrived at the house on the hill. Knocking on the door, she was met with the sight of a gun aimed at her face. "Well, that's a warm welcome." A sharp female voice followed. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Naruko tilted her head slightly to see past the weapon. The woman holding it had short blue hair tied back with a red band, wearing a sleeveless yellow top and dark pants. A tattoo stretched from her shoulder across her chest. "I see you're the cautious type," Naruko said, calmly pushing the gun down. "Nami sent me." She didn't want me around Arlong's crew for some reason. What should I call you? The woman studied her for a moment before lowering her weapon. My name is Nojiko. I'm Nami's sister. What exactly are you doing with Arlong's crew? Naruko shrugged. Following Nami, I guess. Nojiko sighed, stepping aside. Come in. Naruko entered, taking in the modest surroundings. She noticed a young boy sitting at a table and had to do a double take when she spotted an unconscious figure on the floor. Wait a minute, is that Usopp? How did he get here? Nami stole their ship. Nojiko raised an eyebrow. You know him? Yeah, he's part of the crew Nami was traveling with. She left with their ship while we were at Barati. I must have been asleep somewhere she didn't check because she didn't kick me off. Who knocked him out? Nojiko chuckled slightly. That would be me. It was either that or let him get caught by Arlong's crew in Gosa village. At the mention of Gosa village, both Nojiko and the young boy, Chabo, grew noticeably tense. The boy clenched his fists, struggling to hold back tears. Naruko's expression hardened. What happened to Gosa village? Nojiko hesitated before looking away. Arlong and his men happened. Without another word, Naruko turned towards the door. I need to see this for myself. You and Nami are keeping something from me, and I intend to find out what it is. Before Nojiko could stop her, Naruko vanished in a whirlwind of leaves, heading toward the village to uncover the truth. Naruko walked back to Kokoyashi village at a measured pace, choosing to cool herself down rather than rush in frustration. The village of Gosa had been completely devastated, homes overturned as if it were some cruel joke, and not a single soul in sight. Something was gravely wrong with Arlong, and for Nami's sake, Naruko hoped she wouldn't have to encounter him again. If she did, she wasn't sure she could hold back her anger. It was disheartening to see that even outside the elemental nations, there were still those who destroyed lives out of pure greed and malice. Arlong was one of them, and Naruko found herself looking for any excuse to stop him. The world wouldn't mourn the loss of a tyrant like him. An empire? The Arlong Empire? Naruko caught Usopp's distinct voice from nearby. That means he'll conquer all of East Blue, including my home. She spotted Usopp and Nojiko observing the scene from behind a building at the village's edge. Nojiko appeared calm, eyes closed as she leaned against the wall. Perhaps, she murmured. The best thing we can do now is remain quiet and wait. No, Nojiko, Naruko interjected, startling both of them as she appeared between them with a firm expression. The best thing you can do is tell me exactly what's going on here. Nojiko recovered first, eyeing her warily. Where did you come from? Usopp pointed accusingly. You and Nami took our ship and left us at Barati. How do you expect me to let that slide? Naruko crossed her arms. I came from Gosa village, and honestly, I regret going. The destruction there. It's infuriating. But that's a conversation for later, one I'll be having with you and your sister. She then turned to Usopp. And for the record, I didn't steal your ship, Nami did. I was just asleep in the crow's nest. Not my fault. Usopp's mouth fell open. Then why didn't she just kick you off? Naruko smirked. Because I'm too valuable to just toss overboard. Right, Nojiko? She added with a playful wink. Nojiko rolled her eyes, refocusing on the chaos Arlong was causing. Gen-san. Arlong had seized a scarred man in a police uniform, lifting him effortlessly by his collar. You've been stockpiling weapons, Arlong sneered. Anyone who arms themselves is preparing to defy me, and I won't tolerate that. You've disrupted the peace under my rule. His smirk turned menacing. So I suppose I must make an example of you. Usopp's eyes widened in horror. He's going to hurt him over a single weapon? Naruko watched intently, fingers brushing the pouch on her thigh. Give me the word, Nojiko, and I'll put an end to this. He won't even see it coming. Before Nojiko could respond, she ran forward. Arlong, you can't do this. We have paid you without fail for 8 years. No one has ever stood against you. Let Gen-san go. Arlong eyed her with amusement. I've already stated, owning a weapon is an act of defiance. If I let him go, it would encourage rebellion. Unless, of course, you'd prefer I destroy the village instead? Your choice. The villagers, though enraged, remained silent. Naruko clenched her fists, seething. Usopp, you don't know how badly I want to stop him. Usopp, his hands inching toward his slingshot, whispered, then why don't you? You didn't hesitate with Kuro. Naruko exhaled sharply. Kuro was about to harm you and Kaya right in front of me. I had no choice. But this village. She gestured to the people watching in silent defiance. They want to handle things in their own way. Jumping in now would be an insult to their resilience. As if to confirm her words, Genzo turned to the villagers. Do not fight. Be patient. Naruko cringed as Arlong slammed Genzo against a beam. That man is trying to protect his people without violence. If I interfere now, I undermine everything he's trying to do. Arlong hoisted Genzo high. Anyone who opposes me will share his fate. Naruko's eyes narrowed. Of course, it had to come to this. Usopp, adjusting his goggles, nodded. Got it. He launched a shot that struck Arlong square in the face. Explosion marble. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Someone's on the roof. Usopp stood tall, arms crossed despite his shaking knees. I am the bravest warrior of the East Blue, Captain Usopp. He cleared his throat. Everyone fears me as evil Usopp from hell. Leave now, and I'll let you go unharmed. My 8,000 crewmen surround you. Arlong, barely phased, glared at Usopp. I don't care if you have 10 times that number. I will crush you all. With alarming strength, he lifted the house Usopp was standing on and hurled it aside. Usopp barely escaped, fleeing while Arlong's crew restrained their leader to prevent further destruction. Naruko sighed, deciding it was time to step in. In a blur, she appeared amidst the chaos, drawing everyone's attention. A large fishman in a karate gi approached, blocking her view of Arlong. What business do you have here, Uzumaki? Naruko smirked. I figured staying at Arlong Park wasn't the best idea when your crew was talking about turning me into fish bait. And for the record, I don't take orders from any of you, I only listen to Nami. The fishman stepped closer, trying to intimidate her. As long as you're here, human, you obey us. We rule these waters. Naruko scoffed, turning away. Good thing I don't live here, then. Maybe focus on calming Arlong before he levels the village. He glared at her as she walked off, but Naruko simply waved over her shoulder. Unless you just enjoy watching me leave? Sorry, but I'm not interested. The fishman sneered before turning back to his crew. This isn't over. We'll return. Naruko perched on a rooftop, watching as villagers tended to Genzo's wounds. Their hushed discussion about the system intrigued her, but she couldn't quite hear. Long time no see, everyone. The village turned as Nami entered, her expression unreadable. She spotted Naruko on the rooftop and widened her eyes before Naruko jumped down beside Genzo and Nojiko. Nojiko smiled. You don't usually walk through the village. Nami looked around. I heard the commotion. Arlong, right? Genzo remained silent, eyes downcast. Nami simply continued walking up the hill, Nojiko trailing after her. At the edge of a cliff, Nami knelt before a grave, placing a bouquet of flowers upon it. 7 million berry to go. Nojiko approached. You're still keeping count? Nami let out a humorless chuckle. I may be a pirate, but Arlong is someone I understand. I steal for him. But once I reach 100 million berry, I can buy this village's freedom. Nami departed shortly after, making her way back to Arlong Park. Before leaving, she warned Naruko that the fishman she had confronted was Kurobi, one of Arlong's top lieutenants. After chastising Naruko for being reckless, she continued on her way. Naruko sighed as she sat inside Nojiko's home, her arms crossed in frustration. I just don't understand. Why do you all endure this? Why not let me stop Arlong once and for all? Please, give me a reason to take action. Nojiko rested her chin on her hands, gazing at Naruko thoughtfully. Is that why you provoked Kurobi earlier? Because you were hoping for an excuse to fight them? Naruko rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Yeah, I guess I'm that obvious, huh? If he had attacked me, I wouldn't have held back. I've told you before, I can do this. I can put an end to Arlong and his crew. Just say the word. Nojiko shook her head firmly. It's not that simple, Naruko. This is our burden, not yours. Naruko gave her a serious look. It became my problem the moment I arrived here. As long as I'm bound to Nami by our agreement, I'm involved whether you like it or not. So tell me, what exactly is happening here? What has Arlong done to you all? Nojiko hesitated before finally speaking. For the past 8 years, Arlong has forced us to pay heavy taxes. Each adult must pay 100,000 peli, and each child 50,000. Anyone who can't pay. She trailed off, looking away. Naruko's eyes widened in disbelief. That's outrageous. How does anyone in this village afford the kind of money on a regular basis? She clenched her fists. This is just like Nami no Kuni all over again. Doesn't anyone intervene? Nojiko sighed. The person in charge of overseeing this region is on Arlong's payroll. Naruko's expression darkened. Then why hasn't anyone taken action against him? Nojiko frowned. Because the Marine captain stationed here is also under Arlong's control. Naruko stood up abruptly. Then why don't I take care of him too? Nojiko crossed her arms and gave her a firm look. Do you even understand what that would mean? He's a Marine captain. If anything happens to him, the full force of the East Blues military will come after you. Naruko met her gaze, unwavering. So what? Corrupt officers like him hide behind their power and influence. If he's not doing his job, then someone else should replace him, someone who actually enforces justice. If the Marines punish me for doing the right thing, then so be it. Let them come, I'm not as weak as you think. You don't even believe I can defeat Arlong, do you? Even though I've assured you time and time again, you still doubt me. Tears welled up in Nojiko's eyes. You don't understand. Arlong and his crew have crushed everyone who stood against them. The only way we can be free is if Nami's plan works. Realizing she had said too much, Nojiko bit her lip. Naruko's sharp eyes narrowed. What plan? Nojiko looked away, but Naruko gently turned her face back toward her. Nojiko, tell me the truth. You've already confided in me this much, I'm not going to stand by and do nothing. After a long pause, Nojiko finally broke down and revealed everything, how Arlong seized control of the village, how she and Nami lost their adoptive mother, Belmare, because of the tax, and how Nami was forced to join Arlong's crew. She explained Nami's secret plan to buy the village's freedom. By the time she finished, she was sobbing in Naruko's arms. Naruko held her gently, offering silent comfort. After a while, Nojiko sniffled and wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. This is embarrassing. Naruko gave her a reassuring smile, rubbing her back. There's nothing embarrassing about crying, Nojiko. You've endured a lot. Besides, she added with a small chuckle, you completely soaked my sage coat. Nojiko blushed as she noticed the damp fabric. Sorry, Naruko. Her blush deepened when she realized she had just used an affectionate honorific. Could you put me down now? Naruko grinned. Why, Nojiko-chan? Is this making you uncomfortable? I thought you liked it. Nojiko lightly smacked Naruko's chest. I barely know you. No way am I getting cozy with a stranger. Naruko smirked playfully. Well, you could get to know me. Before Nojiko could respond, a commotion outside caught their attention. Seizing the moment, Nojiko quickly stood up. Oh, look at that. Something's happening outside. I should check it out. She hurried toward the door. Naruko laughed as she watched her flee. Later, Naruko followed Nojiko to where the villagers had gathered, all staring out at a ship anchored offshore. So, what's going on? Naruko asked. The villagers hesitated, wary of Naruko's presence due to her association with Arlong. Nojiko, however, answered. That ship is here to evacuate the survivors from Goza village. Naruko nodded. That makes sense. But why is it firing at Arlong Park? What? The villagers gasped in shock. As they turned their attention back to the ship, a cannonball shot toward Arlong Park, but no explosion followed. Naruko shook her head. Those poor fools. Nojiko looked at her questioningly. What do you mean? Naruko kept her eyes locked on the ship. Do you really think Arlong is going to let this go unpunished? You should all look away, it's better if you don't see what happens next. Suddenly, panicked cries erupted from the ship as a whirlpool formed beneath it. Nojiko kneeled beside a young boy watching in horror. Even though they came to save us. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. This is our reality. No one escapes Arlong's rule. Naruko scoffed at her words. That's not true. The only reason Arlong remains in power is because the right people haven't stepped in to stop him. Genzo turned toward Naruko. You work for Arlong. Why are you speaking like this? Naruko smiled. I don't work for Arlong. I told him I work for Nami so I could stay here until all of this is over. And I'm speaking like this because it's the truth. Stop putting all your hopes on one plan. The villagers gasped at her words. If Nami can't succeed, it will break her heart. And keeping her in the dark about your support only isolates her more, Naruko continued. Genzo frowned. We're trying to give her a way out, in case she ever wants to walk away. Naruko shook her head. She won't. Nojiko told me she's only 7 million peli away. She won't stop now, no matter what. The least you can do is let her know you believe in her. Trust me, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone. She turned away. I'm heading back to Arlong Park. I've had enough of sitting around. It's time to make a move. Nojiko blinked before running after her. Wait, you reckless idiot. On the path back to Arlong Park, Naruko paused, blinking at the sight of Usopp caught between Zoro's sheath and Sanji's foot. Hey, you guys made it after all. That was fast. Naruko. Came the collective cry from the crew, except for Sanji, who didn't know her well. Naruko took note of the new addition to their group. Looks like you found the cook you were searching for. Usopp stroked his chin. There must be a reason why Nami joined those fishmen. Naruko offered a knowing smile. There is, but it's not my place to tell. This island has its own way of handling things. She glanced around. Where are those other 2 swordsmen who were with you? Sanji gestured back in the direction they had come from. Naruko sighed. Figures I just missed them. That's my luck, she continued walking down the path. Alright, I'm heading to Arlong Park. You all do what you need to, but I'll be keeping an eye out. Sooner or later, Arlong is bound to make a mistake. Nojiko watched Naruko stroll away, humming a light-hearted tune. Turning back to the rest of Luffy's crew, most of whom seemed unconcerned, she asked, are you seriously letting her walk into their base alone? That's reckless. Zoro, leaning against a tree, looked up. She says she's not part of the crew, so Luffy doesn't have a say over her. Not that he'd stop her anyway. She knows what she's doing. Nojiko rubbed her temple. If I tell you why Nami joined Arlong's crew, will you leave? Luffy stood up. I don't need to hear it. I don't care. I'll be taking a walk. Usopp watched as Luffy headed off in the opposite direction from Naruko. You don't want to know about her past? Luffy didn't turn around. No, I don't. A few hours later. Naruko had grown impatient waiting at Arlong Park. Nami hadn't returned, and though Naruko knew she could handle herself, something felt off. Every time she glanced at Arlong, he seemed oddly satisfied, offering smug grins whenever their eyes met. A sense of unease crept over Naruko. Trusting her instincts, she disappeared from Arlong Park in a flash. As soon as she was gone, Arlong let out a victorious laugh. Back in the village. Naruko arrived to find a crowd gathered around the doctor's office. Pushing through, she spotted Genzo sitting beside a bandaged Nojiko. Naruko's expression darkened. What happened? Genzo clenched his fists. That corrupt officer, Major Nezumi, took all of Nami's savings. Arlong told them where it was, and they ransacked the place. Naruko turned to Nojiko and noticed the bandages on her back. She gently rested a hand over them, her gaze softening. Are you okay? Nojiko looked down, hesitant. That officer shot me when I tried to stop them. Naruko remained silent for a moment before turning to leave. As she passed through the village, her determined expression made the townspeople instinctively step aside. At the outskirts of the village, Naruko spotted Nami running toward them, tears streaming down her face. Catching her in a comforting embrace, Naruko leaned in and whispered, I just needed one reason, one good reason, to put an end to this. Nami's eyes widened. What? She trembled slightly in Naruko's arms. He betrayed you. He tricked you, Naruko said gently before stepping back and walking toward Arlong Park. No one hurts the people I care about. Nami watched her go until she disappeared from sight. Behind her, the villagers began to gather, their resolve strengthening. At the east gate. Naruko reached the entrance just as Johnny and Yosaku were thrown out by Arlong's men. Both were bruised and battered. She raised an eyebrow. So, I assume you know what happened to Nami? The two nodded, looking ashamed. We accused her of betraying us. We thought she was working against us, but we were wrong. When we understood the truth, we tried to fight for her, but... Johnny lowered his head. We couldn't face her after the things we said. Naruko sighed, resisting the urge to lecture them. You guys aren't strong enough to take on Arlong and his crew. Did you really think you had a chance? Neither responded. Naruko patted them on the shoulders, offering a small smile. Still, standing up for a friend, even when the odds were against you, earns you some respect in my book. She rolled her shoulders. That puts you both at notch 1. Johnny and Yosaku blinked in surprise before scrambling to stop her. Wait, Naruko Aniki. You should wait for Luffy, Sanji, Usopp, and Zoro. You can't take them on alone. Naruko glanced back at them and then at the villagers approaching, armed with whatever they could find. You should focus on them instead. None of you have seen me fight, have you? She smirked. Luffy and Nami have caught glimpses, but I haven't really had a reason to go all out. The two swordsmen stood frozen as Naruko's confident stance sent a chill through them. What are you saying, Naruko Aniki? Naruko cracked her neck. I'm saying that if Luffy and the others don't get here soon, there won't be anything left of Arlong Park for them to fight. She formed a swirling sphere of blue energy in her hand and launched it at the iron gate, sending it flying off its hinges. 3 shadow clones appeared beside her, stepping forward to block the villagers from rushing in. The commotion brought a wave of Arlong's men to the entrance. What are you doing here, Uzumaki? Arlong didn't call for you or Nami. Naruko narrowed her eyes. I already told him, I don't work for him. I'm here for Nami, and nothing else. As of today, whatever arrangement he had with her is over. Arlong, watching from the patio, chuckled. You really think you can take my best mapmaker from me? And why would that be, little human? Naruko met his gaze, her usual bright blue eyes now cold and unwavering. Because no one gets away with hurting my friends. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more exciting content. Thank you for your support. Best regards. 6 Path Weeb.